fake news. In recent years, it's become a buzzy catchphrase, aimed at reporting felt to be less than truthful, or more concerned with the pre-existing agenda than actual facts. This isn't that surprising, given an ever-evolving 24-hour news cycle that for years has regularly prioritized sensationalism and conflict in order to attract the largest audience, with entertainment journalism in particular feeling plagued by clickbait headlines and anonymous source theorizing presented as actual news items. More troublingly, though, the term fake news was heavily weaponized over the last 4 years in America by a presidential administration and its followers that seemingly believed any reporting not simply saying exactly what they wanted to hear must in turn be false and antagonistic, even often offering up their own alternative facts to combat what they considered an unfair media landscape. It is, of course, appropriate and even important to call out and question this particular problematic attack on the Fourth Estate. But it is also true that journalism cannot always be blindly trusted. Though, in many of the most infamous cases of actual fake news, it wasn't a political agenda that served as the driving force, but rather the self-serving nature of reporters looking to protect or strengthen their position. In 1981, Janet Cook, a writer for the Washington Post, won the Pulitzer Prize for feature writing for a heartbreaking story she had published the previous year, concerning an 8-year-old heroin addict. When an investigation by another newspaper revealed that both the story and Cook's own academic credentials were fabricated, she returned the Pulitzer, the only person to date to do so. In 1998, political magazine The New Republic published a story by one of their star feature writers, Stephen Glass, about a 15-year-old hacker who infiltrated a company's computer network and then was hired as their digital security consultant when discovered. A writer for Forbes tried to look deeper into the story, starting a chain of events eventually exposing that this story, and 26 others Glass had written for the magazine, were partially or entirely fabricated. Glass was let go from the New Republic and forced to pay back $200,000 they and other publications had paid him for his work. The scandal was eventually dramatized, with Hayden Christensen portraying Glass, in the critically acclaimed and award-winning film Shattered Glass, released in 2003, the same year, coincidentally, that a New York Times writer named Jason Blair was revealed to have plagiarized or fabricated a number of elements in several high-profile stories he had written for the prestigious newspaper over the past 2 years. 2003 also saw the release of a book that would soon lead to one of the most high-profile and well-remembered cases of fabricated writing being exposed in America. But this time, not from the world of journalism, but rather involving a rising star memoirist named James Frey. In 2003's A Million Little Pieces and its 2005 follow-up My Friend Leonard, Frey detailed his struggles with drug addiction and crime, telling the story of his time spent in a 12-step rehab facility. The books made a big splash, particularly A Million Little Pieces, which in 2005 was selected as part of the hugely influential Oprah's Book Club, with Frey himself appearing as a guest on Oprah's daytime talk show, and the book subsequently spending 15 straight weeks atop the New York Times bestseller list. In January of 2006, however, The Smoking Gun, a website dedicated to bringing to light public information often underreported or hidden by mainstream media sources, published a bombshell report detailing a number of elements in Frey's book which they attempted to verify, but in fact discovered were fabricated. For instance, in the book, Frey claimed that after hitting a police car and getting into a violent fight with officers while high on crack, he had spent 87 days in jail. The Smoking Gun, though, was able to uncover Frey had actually only been in jail a few hours for some minor offenses, with the arresting officers describing him as polite and cooperative. The fallout was immediate. Frey was forced to return to the Oprah show and admit his lies, as Oprah publicly chastised both Frey and his editor for lying to her and her audience. Frey was dropped by his literary agent, and Random House, who had published both titles, hurriedly sent bookstores copies of a note written by Frey acknowledging the fabrications. Bookstores were asked to insert the notes into existing copies of the books, until later print runs made them a permanent fixture. Random House also took the then unheard-of step of offering refunds to any readers that could prove they had purchased the book, but also completed a sworn statement that they had done so believing it to be a memoir and felt personally deceived. The controversy was a definite black eye on Frey's reputation, but not a career ender. Perhaps wisely, Frey turned to outright fiction for his next endeavors. Looking to bounce back from the scandal and the financial ramifications it had caused him, he decided to jump into the then booming young adult literary market, in 2009 teaming with other writers to create a sci-fi adventure series called The Lorean Legacies. This effort would not be without its own scandals, but one can only assume Frey was relieved not to have anyone questioning whether these stories, of superpowered alien teens hiding on Earth, were actually true. And for a brief moment, Frey even seemed potentially poised to be the creator of the next Twilight-level YA multimedia franchise, as the first book in the series was optioned by a major studio before the finished product even hit bookstore shelves. The year is 2011, and DreamWorks Pictures and Walt Disney Studios are ready to launch the next big YA cinematic franchise with I Am Number 4. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I am number 2 to this podcast, so definitely kill Trev first.
Well, we'll get into that. I don't even know how to start now.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. But I'm Chris, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the moment has come, Chris.
Yes.
We couldn't put it off forever.
Yes.
This Band-Aid had to be torn off eventually. It's the moment we've dreaded since the beginning.
Yep.
But a moment that we knew was always looming, because this starts a big part of our podcast.
I know, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this is our first ever dive into movies based on YA literary properties.
Mm-hmm.
And today we are looking at I Am Number 4, a 2011 film. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Of course. It is directed by DJ Caruso, written by Alfred Goff, I think is how you pronounce his name, Miles Millar, and Marty Noxon. The budget of the film is $50 million. Domestically, it took in $55 million, but worldwide, it actually did $150 million. So a moderate, I don't want to say hit, but it definitely was like financially fine.
Yeah, no one lost jobs on this one, probably.
For sure.
We should also talk about the producers, because I think that's an interesting, or at least an important thing. I mean, the main producer, I know you want to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, the main producer is Michael Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Bay, and who else was there? There was
well, Steven Spielberg was involved in this one too, right?
Right. It is DreamWorks. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and even if we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Spielberg is even more involved than some people might realize he's involved.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this is a movie that maybe people have forgotten, and I don't know. It's hard. This is interesting because this was a first time watch for both of us.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking about that, how every other movie we've done, there's been either we've both seen it, one of us has seen it, or we at least have a lot more awareness of it as a property.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to come to this one not knowing anything and going in and kind of having, I don't know if you were doing this too, Chris, while you're watching it, but somewhat trying to view it from the point of view of, well, there were people who are probably fans of this material,
mm-hmm.
And trying to view it in that aspect. And I know that the book series, did go on. So this is the adaptation of the first of a series of, what's the name of that series here?
The Lorien Legacies.
The Lorien Legacies, okay. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But the series definitely completed. I think there's 5 or 6 of them, I believe.
7, I think. Yeah, 7. Seven total. 7 total.
Wow. 7, okay.
Yeah, I know, right?
You'd think they would just go to 10. Once you pass, to me, once you pass 6, you got to go to 10.
I mean, that's what Fast and Furious is doing, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is obviously one of those cases where, obviously, as it's featured on our show, it's the only one. They didn't get to do the sequels. But I know that obviously there are probably a lot of fans who wish they did. So we want to respect that. But it's interesting just watching this, thinking about how it felt to me like this movie, at least, had no impact.
No.
I mean, you said obviously it did okay. It made some money, but it just simply had no cultural impact whatsoever. And you don't hear anyone talk about this series today at all.
It's funny. I actually mentioned this earlier to Trev before we were recording, but you can actually find this movie on YouTube. It's got like a glaze, like some sort of anti-piracy, or whatever, to throw off the algorithms for copyright on YouTube. The full movie's there, and it has 3 million plus views, and I guess the studio just doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's just on there. So that's kind of telling that it's just, even if you try to find clips of the movie, they're all there, but it's just kind of, there's no even real big write-ups on the film. You know what I mean? Like when something like this happens, you either see like a bunch of reviews for it or this and that. It's actually hard to find like legitimate reviews of the film, like video reviews, YouTube. The whole footprint of the film is like not even there.
Yeah, it really seems like it kind of just came and went. Except for, and I know we're going to talk about it a little later. The website Collider. Boy, man, they went all in on coverage of this movie.
Yeah, totally.
I was looking at it because you sent me a particular article that they did that we're going to actually reference later. But then I was looking to see what else they did, and wow, I don't know if you noticed this, Chris, but Collider, they were really covering the hell out of this movie.
Oh yeah,
in every stage of it. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if that was like a thing set up by the studio. You know, sometimes I'm kind of suspicious of that.
Definitely.
Yeah. But so this is item number 4, and we like to always start by talking about why did this movie happen, and in this case, I think that's very simple. It boils down to one word, and it's a word that we're probably going to bring up a lot in this section of the show for future episodes when we talk about other movies like this, and that word is Twilight.
Yes.
Twilight. Some people like to, sometimes we talk about like the YA movie boom of like, around this time. People often throw Twilight and Hunger Games together, but it's important to remember that Twilight precedes Hunger Games by quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And in fact, this movie precedes Hunger Games. So Hunger Games actually comes a little later in like the cycle. I believe Hunger Games comes out the next year after this. I think the first one is 2012.
Yep.
Obviously, the books were already out and doing well, but Twilight was just obviously this huge, pop cultural phenomenon. And suddenly every studio wanted to find not only the next like YA book to adapt, but like Twilight, the next entire YA franchise where you get not just one film, but sequels.
Yeah. And
you see every studio racing to like buy up every property that might seem like it has some appeal. A lot of them are kind of Twilight-esque, and we're definitely gonna look at some of those. I wouldn't say this one is necessarily that Twilight-ish, but definitely still exists in that YA realm of young teen characters. Discovery of powers, obviously with the fantasy sci-fi bent. Mm-hmm. This is definitely like we want to be the next Twilight, but I guess more for an action fan realm.
Yeah. I saw somebody say it was like Twilight for boys in a weird way, which we can get into a little later for sure.
I mean, I don't like to gender things up, but okay, well, I guess we'll go with it.
Well, I didn't say that. I said somebody on the internet said it.
Okay, good. But boys can enjoy Twilight. No problem. No
shade.
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, and so in fact, though, when we talk about like the backstory of this movie, the kind of more interesting backstory, I guess, kind of ties into the story of the Lorien legacies in general. In my intro, I talked a little bit about James Frey, the author, and it's important to note that the reason I brought him up is that Pittacus Lore, the author of the Lorien Legacy series, is actually not a person named Pittacus Lore. That is a pseudonym. That is actually an amalgamation, a collective of authors led by James Frey, the others being Joby Hughes and also someone named Greg Boos. Mm. And they together are Pittacus Lore, who is the listed author. And so this is, I just want to bring this up right away because this is really going to tie into what I have to say about the movie later.
Sure.
The backstory of this kind of comes from another controversy that James Frey got himself involved in. I guess one controversy in his literary career wasn't enough, so getting busted for fabricating pieces of his memoir. He's like, hold my beer. I still got more to do here. So in 2009, and I'm reading this from our buddy's Wikipedia, never wrong, but I remember hearing about this a little bit too. In 2009, Frey formed Full Fathom 5, a young adult novel publishing company that aimed to create highly commercial novels like Twilight. So right away, right, you see the cynicism already there, right? 2008, Twilight, gigantic hit. 2009, hey, let's create a company that is specifically trying to develop new properties like Twilight. And, that's commerce. I'm not saying, whatever, more power to you, but it still speaks to the end product.
Yeah.
In November 2010, controversy arose when an MFA student who had been in talks to create content for the company released her extremely limiting contract online. The contract allows Frey license to remove an author from the project at any time, does not require him to give the author credit for his or her work, and only pays a standard advance of $250. A New York Magazine article titled James Frey's Fiction Factory gave more details about the company, including information about the highly successful Lorien Legacy series, a collaboration between MFA student Joby Hughes and Frey. The article details how Frey removed Hughes from the project, allegedly during a screaming match between the two authors. In the article, Frey is accused of abusing and using MFA students as cheap labor to churn out commercial young adult books. So that is where the Lorien Legacies comes from. It is very much like hey, let's make something that will make us a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think the cynicism definitely carries over the movies as well, because this is one of those cases. And not that there's always been, I think the primary example of this I always think of is Jurassic Park, where the movie kind of gets going before the book has even been published. The manuscript is brought to Michael Bay. Michael Bay is interested in it, and he kind of takes it. I don't know what he obviously has the working relationship with Steven Spielberg. And he convinces Spielberg it's a good property for them. It's set up at DreamWorks, and originally the idea is for Michael Bay to direct it. In which case, you would probably be one of your favorite movies.
Well, and then unfortunately, though, he was tied up gearing up for Transformers: Dark of the Moon. So he could not direct it, which then leads Steven Spielberg to call up a director that's been working for DreamWorks for a while now, DJ Caruso. DJ Caruso made 2 films with Shia LaBeouf, Eagle Eye, or first of all, Disturbia, and then Eagle Eye, which 2 movies I actually own. I love Disturbia. I think Disturbia is actually awesome. I used to really like Eagle Eye. I haven't seen it in a long, long time, so I can't really comment on my thoughts on it. But I think this was during that time that I was like all in on Shia LaBeouf. He's a little complicated figure nowadays, but back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, he was like the big star. So I was a big fan of those films and DJ Caruso, and so Steven Spielberg called up him and gave him the manuscript, and they started working on this film.
Yeah, my DJ Caruso thoughts are kind of just to echo off of that. I do think I still will defend Disturbia. I think Disturbia is a surprisingly good movie for being like, on the surface level, just a dumb teen ripoff of Rear Window.
Yep.
But it's actually got a good sense of humor. It's got some nice thrills and twists and stuff, and I really like David Morse in it. And yeah, that's it's a likable performance by Shia LaBeouf. So I enjoy that movie. Eagle Eye is a piece of shit. You need. I don't know if I should say you need to revisit it and realize the error of your ways.
Sure.
But yeah, I remember seeing that in the theater and just being like, oh. Because I remember the trailer being kind of intriguing, but the movie itself just being I thought it was garbage. But whatever, that can I kind of just have no opinion on DJ Caruso, because you have one movie that I like and then another I don't like, and then we have this one, and even that kind of complicates it a little bit as we'll talk about. But and I always think of, I don't know if this is exactly true. You might know a little bit more about this. In my head, I kind of always think of DJ Caruso as like a Michael Bay protege. Is that it? Would you say that's accurate? Is that like, is he like under his tutelage, or? I think
a little bit of that, especially because
I couldn't figure out if he was like a Michael Bay protege or a Spielberg protege.
I think it's a bit of both, honestly, and I think it comes out of the Transformers relationship. I really do think it's that. Michael Bay and Steven Spielberg kind of struck gold with Transformers 1, and like financially, success, like critically, whatever. But that's again when Shia was up and coming, and then this like trio kind of formed, and it was almost like everything that they worked on together were surefire hits. You know what I mean? And I think that's it. Just kind of, I think it's a bit of both. DJ Caruso, in that we talked about, there's that Collider interview. He talks a lot about all the powers of Michael Bay, like production wise, he had access to stuff like that. And then like you're gonna talk about later, like Spielberg had quite a big hand in the characters in this film too. So I think a little column A, column B, if I was to just sum it up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at his like little bio on Wikipedia now, and I see that he was actually a protege of John Badham, who directed like Drop Zone and Nick of Time, and that's kind of interesting. But also then he goes on to do Salt and Sea, which is a movie I remember thinking was pretty good when I saw it. Then Taking Lives with Angelina Jolie and Ethan Hawke, which I remember thinking was kind of bad when I saw it.
Right. Yeah.
And then he goes on to do Two for the Money, which I don't really remember anything about that. But then he was asked by Spielberg to direct Disturbia, so he's kind of brought into the fold by Spielberg. But it's interesting because there's nothing about those films, like even though I did enjoy Salt and Sea, but there's nothing about those films where you'd think he would catch Spielberg's eye. It's just an interesting thing, and I wonder how much of it speaks to him just being kind of. This is going to sound so mean, right? But like, not a director for hire, but more like a company guy who's just going to like execute the vision of the producers mostly. And I think we see that here because I think this is definitely a film, I'm number 4, which is very much trying to be a Spielberg Bay kind of movie.
Yes.
I don't know if DJ Caruso has a directorial voice in general, and I don't know if we see one in here.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
This kind of goes to what you said about there just not being a lot written about this movie. In terms of like the rest of the production, I didn't really find anything too interesting about it. I feel like it's, sometimes you get the whole thing about these are all the different names that are up for different roles. And that kind of escaped me this time. It just seemed like, except for one particular exception. In our lead role of number 4, we have Alex Pettifer, who is kind of an up-and-coming young star at the moment. People might remember him as also being the lead in Magic Mike. And then in the role of his guardian, kind of like the secondary male lead of the movie, Charlton Copley was cast.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he had to drop out due to press obligations with A-Team. I always think that's funny when just doing press makes you like leave.
I know, right? It's so strange to, and also like this movie didn't go forward with sequels, but like what if it did? You know what I mean? Like, and he had to do press for a movie that I think we're gonna actually have to talk about one day. The A-Team.
Yeah.
It's just funny how that works out.
Yeah, it's just strange because I mean, you'd think studios would be able to work that kind of stuff out, between themselves. But what do I know? Anyways, I'm not going to say who replaced them because we'll get into the rest of the cast in a moment. But that was kind of the only thing I saw about like a potential cast member who's not there. Otherwise, it just seemed like this movie kind of just chugged along. They were like actually rushing to get this out because part of the story was that DJ Caruso did not have very long to kind of think about this project before he had to jump into it. This is one of the cases where they already had a release date announced. That might even tie into the fact that the book, like I said, they started production on this before the book even came out because they just had the manuscript. So they probably had a release date somewhat probably tied to when the book was going to hit. That's kind of my guess.
Sounds right.
Because and that's the thing too. I wonder if that affects this movie because I've read some stuff. We both read some stuff from DJ Caruso, where he's kind of talking about the book series, but he's only seen like outlines of everything at this point. Yeah. Because they've jumped into the movie before it's really come out and become like the same kind of sensation Twilight was.
Well, they don't even
Games would later be.
They don't even know how the audience is going to react to the book.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the weird part.
It's strange. You're trying to you're just assuming because the YA market is such a big deal at the moment. Yeah. They're like, well, this obviously is going to work, right? But,
and Trev, you're not even like you're saying how quickly they went into production and stuff. Like DJ Caruso had 1 year to make the film. This is from writing it, getting it written, shooting it, special effects, release. 1 year for a quote unquote tentpole film to spawn, I guess, 6 sequels. That is kind of unheard of. When that happens, again, kind of warning shots are being fired. my radar detector's going right now that something might be wrong.
Yeah, I'll give it to you right now. I just saw the publication date of the book I Am Number 4 is August 3rd, 2010, and the release date of the film I Am Number 4 is February 18th, 2011.
Wow.
That is not a long time to establish a hardcore devoted audience for this book series. I'm sure there were people who read it right away, and yes, I know what you're about to say, and yes.
Is it on the day? Is this episode released on the 10-year anniversary?
Let's see here. No, we're 2 days before the 10th.
Oh my God. Not planned at all. That's crazy.
No, yeah.
Crazy.
Well, happy anniversary, I Am Number 4.
You're 10 years old.
Yeah. That's a pretty crappy birthday. You can't drink yet. You can't do anything fun. We can't even have a party for you because of COVID. Sorry. Yeah. But hey, we will talk about you for the next hour or so.
I am number 10. I'll see myself.
You're fired. Yeah. All right. In terms of actually, what else I was going to say about the making of this? I'm just going to save because it ties more into my thoughts on the film itself.
Sure.
Do you have anything more you want to say about the movie? I mean, I think it's just kind of one of those pretty straightforward cases, right?
Well, I was going to just talk about how how targeted the marketing was, towards the film. The marketing was very, very much again. I know we're talking Twilight being an inspiration, but it'll get to my thoughts on the film as well by just mentioning this. It was extremely targeted towards teenagers.
What is that odious stench? Smells like teenagers.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna later on. I'm gonna see where they maybe had some missteps. But advertisements ran in 17 magazine, Teen Vogue, and actually Disney was the distributor for the film, and they had set up a cast tour around the states, going to Hot Topics.
All right, you know what? Let's just end the episode. We can't top that. Let's just.
I just wanted to get that in. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So go on.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So you could go buy all your Invader Zim merchandise
Yeah.
and your fishnet stockings, and also meet
Alex Pettifer.
cast of yeah.
Anyway.
Oh man, I went to Hot Topic just to get some cool pins for my jean jacket. I met that guy from Lost. How exciting! I guess it's also kind of interesting to note that this was the first film to be the first DreamWorks production to be released by Touchstone as part of like a gigantic kind of distribution deal they signed with Walt Disney Studios.
30 movies.
30 movies, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'd assume, is that done yet? I don't know, it's been 10 years. I haven't really tracked it, but
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the other ones were, because it's interesting. It's just kind of funny to think they started with this one. It's that kind of case where they started when it came out with Disney, like, oh no, we have 29 more of these.
And there's like this one person with like a blackboard or like a whiteboard, like crossing them off every single like 6 months.
And by the way, keep in mind, when they signed that deal for 30 movies, they thought 6 of them were going to be this franchise.
Oh no. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's another.
Right, well,
we can read into that another day.
Yeah. Well, do you want to just dive right in?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
There were 9 of us who escaped. Number 1 was killed in Malaysia. Number 2 was murdered in England. Number 3 was hunted down in Kenya.
You can only be killed in sequence.
What number am I? 7? 5? I'm number 4. I'm next. I've been on the run since I can remember.
You keep your head down.
I know how to blend in.
You're gonna do well here.
John Smith.
Okay. You don't want to tell me your name.
What's this? Seems like you want to run away.
That is kind of private, actually.
Been to a lot of places. I think this is a pretty good place.
You were given these powers for a reason. As you focus, you're gonna learn to control them. They're here.
Where is the boy? There's a hell of a lot more coming.
I'm not gonna let anyone hurt you. I'm not leaving.
You can't stop what's coming. Dad! Where is she?
You have no idea how many have made sacrifices so you could live.
If they kill you, we are all gonna die.
Who are you?
Number 6.
You're more powerful together.
You have no idea what I'm capable of.
John Smith is an alien from planet Lorien who was sent to Earth as a child alongside 8 others to escape an invading race, the Mogadorians, which destroyed their home planet. He is protected by a warrior/guardian called Henry, and has developed superpowers due to his extraterrestrial nature, such as enhanced strength, speed, agility, telekinesis, resistance to fire and heat, and the power to generate light from his hands. The Mogadorians, led by the evil commander, know about the 9 toddlers that came to Earth and are now hunting them. The 9 gifted Lorians can only be killed in numerical sequence, with 3 of them having already been slain. John is number 4. Knowing this, he and Henry flee Florida to Paradise, Ohio, where John befriends conspiracy theorist Sam Good, a dog he names Bernie Kosar, and amateur photographer Sarah Hart, whose ex-boyfriend, school athlete Mark James, is a bully who often torments Sam and now John. As the Mogadorians close in on John, another Lorian alien, number 6, hunts down the Mogadorians herself instead of running, a proactive decision after the murder of her own guardian. With John's random displays of power, caused by his difficulty in controlling them, and too many people getting suspicious, Henry tells John they must move on, but John can't disappear just like that. He's fallen for Sarah in the Lorian mate-for-life kind of way, and in doing so, he must confront the Mogadorians in a last-ditch effort for the Lorian species to survive to live another day.
Yep, that is I am number 4.
Okay, just like right off the bat, like you go. What are your?
Okay, you want me?
I think. Well, this is the fun thing about this episode is that, like, again, we've done whatever the 13 or 14 films at this point, and I like that this one, me and you both went in completely blind.
We went completely. This is an interesting thing because not only did we both go in blind, but there's no reason either of us have to even speculate about how the other felt about it.
No,
because this is a franchise we've obviously never talked about. We don't have any like real knowledge of, and I don't know about you, but I tried to go in as blind as possible.
Same, actually. I didn't even. The only thing I read going in, I was like, maybe I'll read at least the synopsis on like IMDb or Letterboxd or something, like just something of a hint. But I never watched the trailer. I didn't do our how we do our research. I made sure to not do my research because I was like, this will be like more fun for us going into this one with like nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I watched it, I kind of remembered a couple things from the trailer when I just saw it in the theater back in the day, but I didn't revisit it. All I really knew was that it had Alex Pettifer, and I think I knew that Theresa Palmer was in it as well. Right. And I knew it was about like aliens. That's kind of all I knew.
Sure.
And I went in blind, and I was determined to be fair because who knows, we always are. And I will just say, my overall thought is, this is my least favorite kind of movie.
Yeah.
This is, to me, like the worst kind of movie because it's not good, but it's also not bad in an interesting way. We've talked about movies like Catwoman, like Wild Wild West and Spawn, movies I didn't like, but had a level of humor to them and like how like batshit ridiculous some of the decisions were, or just like how nonsensical narrative was or whatever. The kind of movies you can watch with your friends with some beers and have a good time. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm a huge fan of like bad movie nights, but this isn't that kind of bad. This is just, like I said, it kind of ties into that whole thing with it coming from a book series that was designed to just be product. This just has that very cynical, boring overall like presentation to it. And it's not memorable. It's not interesting. It's just so boring. And I think the big part of it is that it just doesn't offer you anything you haven't seen before. And I know people are going to come in and say, but Trevor, aren't you the guy who like a couple episodes back was defending Battleship, a movie that also is like all cliche and all like, tropes we've seen before? And yes, and I've thought about this, and I was actually thinking today, what's the distinction in my head? And it's that with Battleship, its simplicity works in its favor. It's a kind of movie that it's nothing you haven't seen before, but it's also so simple in what it's doing that you can just kind of turn your brain off and enjoy it. This, on the other hand, is a movie that is asking you to pay attention to it. You kind of need to be invested in the story because it's throwing a lot at you. The problem is none of it is interesting, and that's ultimately the failing of this film. It's just a slog, and I did not like it.
Yeah, I'm. You know me, I like when we fight, as friends do. But this one I think will be in pretty fairly similar agreement, I would say. Yeah. I think this is kind of the perfect movie for our show. In the sense that it's everything wrong with Hollywood. It is delusions of grandeur. It is putting the cart before the horse. All set up and no payoff. Yeah. This film is all set up. It's and I'm okay with that at times. Like I mean I'm pretty forgiving about that when it happens, but this one just felt like
It's not a movie, it's a pilot episode, right?
You're right.
Like,
you're right. Yeah. It's not, that's totally what it is. It's not complete in any way. It is there's MacGuffins in this film that never get explained. And for the listener, a MacGuffin is a film term of like how we joke about like the power sword or the magic rock, or actually there is a magic rock in this. Something that the hero needs to find to complete the journey. And in this film, there's a couple MacGuffins that do not get explained is they're absolutely waiting to tell you in movie 2 or 3, and it's kind of frustrating. Like, I mean, I'm not angry at the movie at all. Like, it's weird because I'm not really I'm not passionate about it in any way, shape, or form.
That's what I mean. That's what sucks. I would rather watch a movie that I'm so bad I'm mad, because at least that's interesting.
Yeah, and even like when I watch these films, like sometimes like for the show, I write down like my notes, and sometimes I'm trying to make my notes like funny or like outrageous and stuff. But really, there's not a lot here to do that.
Chris, I will actually tell you, and I think this is another indication of the quality of the film. So like you, I sit down and I have a notebook in front of me as I watch, and I do my due diligence and I take notes, so we have things to talk about. And our listeners have heard us reference our notes, and oftentimes, I forgot to say this from my notes. Mm-hmm. And I look at my notes right now in front of me, and I notice I'm jotting down a lot of stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I seriously remember I went into about a 50-minute period where I did not write a single note. Mm-hmm. And I want to clarify, that is not because I was engrossed in the film. It's because the movie was giving me nothing worth writing about. There was like nothing happening where I was like, oh, that's interesting. I should write that down and talk about it. It was just, the movie was kind of like watching over me, and I wasn't being pulled in. I mean, I think that's like, if I can't even like, if there's nothing in there for me even to want to mock or like point out, that's a problem, because it's just nothing.
That's it, everybody. Follow us on. No, but like, where do you want to start? Like, so those are our initial thoughts. That's like what our overall thoughts are. Like, where do you want to go from here? Where do you want to start with? Do you want to start maybe your performances, or do you want to start, like, what do you want to do?
We can start with performances, and I'll just preface this by saying, so the nice thing about going in blind is that there was one particular performer in this that I did not know was going to be in it. And I was very excited when they showed up. And I thought for a moment, holy crap, this is going to be good. I'm saved. I can't believe I didn't know. This might actually be entertaining. And to be fair, it's the best performance in the film, I'd say.
Yep.
But yeah, I was speaking about Timothy Olyphant. Timothy Olyphant is the secondary elitist that took the place of Sharlto Copley. We'll get to Olyphant in a moment. I guess we should start with the man of the hour, number 4 himself, Alex Pettifer. He is the guy that the studio, the director, Caruso, and the producers, that's just like John Carter, we've talked about before with Taylor Kitsch. This is putting a lot of weight on this actor's shoulders, right? Because they're not just casting him to carry one movie. They're looking at him as the star of a 6-movie franchise, a big movie franchise. So you look at this and you think, is there anything in this performance that seems to call that? What's your opinion on Pettifer in this?
He's just kind of like a nothing burger. They're trying to do the Twilight monotoned, mysterious cliche. Yeah. And he's trying to do that, but there's something about I have in my notes that Alex looks like he could be a Paul brother. Like of what's their names?
Logan and Jake.
Yeah, like he looks like he could be one of them.
Yeah.
But I just felt like he was just kind of like, he's just like so boring. Like, I mean, it sucks to say, but he's so boring. And this movie, before I mentioned how targeted this was at teenagers. Right? And I say that because for this reason. Twilight, for better or for worse, and for demographic or whatever, it's trying to be sexy. Mm-hmm. Twilight's trying to be romantic. It's trying to get some sort of, your heart racing a little bit for this connection between the two characters. Now, this film, I think, is neither sexy enough to be Twilight, nor is it childish enough to be for kids. Mm-hmm. This movie feels like they wanted to make it for 16, 17-year-olds, but honestly, it's kind of for preteens. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I definitely agree that it's a failing of the film, one of many, that there's just no heat in the relationship between Alex Pettifer and Diana Agron as Sarah. Okay. I watched this movie this morning, folks. I remember his name because it's number 4. That's easy, But
actually, it's John Smith.
John Smith, yeah. But yeah, their relationship is just, oh God. I mean, like it's very cliched teen movie relationship, but I nothing against I shouldn't say nothing against the performers. I don't think either of them are doing an amazing job, but they're not really given anything to work with script wise either. So that's the problem. They're both attractive. That's clearly like what the main thinking was. It is weird because they're during their first like meet cute. So, number 4 is on the run with his guardian, and they've had to flee to the small town of Paradise, Ohio. And the guardian, played by Oliphant, wants number 4 to just kind of lay low and, not go out into public anymore because they're being hunted by this other alien race. But number 4 is like, no, I want to go to school. I want to be like a normal kid. And so the meet cute is when the first day he goes to school, he goes to the principal's office to get his schedule, and he sees her in a meeting with the principal. She's kind of getting yelled at for, she's a photographer, and she's been taking pictures of people without their knowledge and putting up this blog that's all about the people in the town. And I was watching that scene, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is that Hollywood thing where, why did they cast this like 28, 30-year-old dude to play a teenager?
Yeah.
Because Alex Pettifer does not look like a teenager at all. And I looked up, and he was only like 21 when he made this. That's actually pretty close to teen by Hollywood standards. Mm-hmm. But he definitely like looks too old. Did you have that thought too? Like when they're together as a couple, it looks like there's a bigger age difference.
It's funny you say that, but I think it's the reason I didn't see that is because right now I'm rewatching/watching because I didn't really watch it when it was out. I'm watching the OC right now,
yeah,
and just to kind of pass the days away. And everybody in that show looks too old, so
yeah.
I think I'm a little manipulated by that.
To it,
yeah. So like I didn't really feel that because again, a lot of this even felt like the OC in a weird like early 2000s. Like this movie feels a little too early. You know what I mean? Like it feels like made 10 years ago, but it's like in 2001.
Well, it's too early or it's too late, right? Because all the high school stuff, as we said, and this is true of I guess just the film in general, because we talk about like the cynical nature of it. It's a product movie.
Yeah.
Everything in this you can tell is like a decision, a boardroom decision to, hey, what's worked in other movies? Let's do that now. Mm-hmm. And when I say it's either too early or too late, the too late part comes from the entire first act or so, right, where it's all the high school stuff. Feels right out of every 80s high school movie you've ever seen.
Sure.
To the point where, like, immediately when he goes into the hallways with the girl, he's just instantly bullied by the school's quarterback, right? The homecoming king and the quarterback jock. And they even have a character, like, comment on it, because, of course, he meets his, like, nerdy friend, too.
Yeah.
His nerdy friend, Sam, he's also targeted by the bullies. And he gets pushed into the lockers by the jocks. And as they walk away, I wrote this down, Sam says, "Gotta love the classics. Homecoming king versus science nerd." Okay, great move. That's like that thing you do when, maybe if we point out that it's a cliche, it won't be as bad. But it still is,
Yeah, I agree.
And that's just the way all this stuff feels. It's just so basic and obvious. I think Alex Pettifer's best moments actually are in his scenes with Diana Agron, though. I think when he has to kind of play vulnerable or like the moments of his performance I kind of liked were like when she takes him home to her parents' house for the first time, and he's just like staring at the house, and she's like, "It's just a house," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know," but he's never been able to live somewhere that nice because they're always on the run, and just his kind of fascination with like everyday normal life. I think he is okay in those moments. When the movie asks him to kind of react to his emerging powers or become a hero, he's definitely less convincing. Agree or?
Not totally. I didn't think he was that great. Like I really didn't.
Well, no,
I don't know.
I'm not saying he's great. I'm saying I'm trying to say if there were if there's like a scale here, his best moments are the moments where it's more about like this glimpses of humanity than they are action man, I'd say. And I think that makes sense because I also think he's pretty decent. And I would even say I'd actually say he's good in Magic Mike. So I think he has like a naturalism to him. I think he's overwhelmed in this movie because of what the script is and because it's just such a blank slate. Yeah,
that's fair. And I think it comes down to there's too much mystery around this. Like I've kind of mentioned in the synopsis. There's the Lorians and the Mogadarians. And the Lorians are the alien race that we're following, and that's the alien race that number 4, aka John Smith, is. And the movie never shows us Lorian. It never shows us the life before Earth. It never gives us anything. And really, the first thing we see after number 3 getting killed is really just a narration from number 4.
This is the part I hate the most. The running. But it's the only thing in my life that's real. The rest is a lie. Even Henry. People think he's my father. He's not. He's a warrior from my planet, assigned to keep me alive. I don't remember remember my father. All he left for me was some kind of box. Henry says he'll pass it on to me when the time is right. I got my first scar when I was 9 years old, near the border of Mexico. It woke me from my sleep. It was the first sign that the Mogadorians had found us here on Earth. The second scar came when I was 12. I was in Colorado, in the middle of a spelling bee. As soon as I felt it, I knew number 2 was dead. Last night I got my third scar. I was just a kid when the Mogadorians invaded my planet, Lore. 9 of us children escaped. We were gifted, meant to protect our people when we grew up. We never got the chance. Everyone was killed. We are the last of our kind. 3 of us are gone, dead. They are hunting us down one by one in order. I know I'm next. I am number 4.
And with that narration, it's all tell no show. And I think that's a big problem with the film in general. So when I'm seeing John Smith act like, this is so weird, like, going into this house is so weird. Well, as the viewer, that's all I've seen him do. Why is he like this? Why is he weirded out by a house when he's been living on Earth for 11 years?
It is pretty crazy how much stuff is just missing here. How many important, crucial pieces are not given to us. Mm-hmm. For a movie that is so driven by exposition and is so throwing information at you so often, it's also like not giving you the really important pieces that you need. Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing. And this is where it's definitely a problem with the movie, because in the interview that we're going to reference a few times during this with DJ Caruso, where he was interviewed on set while they were filming it. He was asked about that, and he admitted that they give less of the backstory in this movie than they do in the book. That he thought he wanted to play the movie as more of a mystery. And so, like, all this stuff about Lorien and the whole backstory and how long number 4 has been on Earth, apparently that stuff is in the book, and he just decided to remove that here. And he said, we'll save that for the sequels,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, here, let me read this, actually, this part from this Collider interview. So the interviewer goes, "So this is mostly a setup for these characters. Do we get a lot of their history?" So DJ Caruso says, "You know what? This is interesting. In the book, you'll get a lot more of the history of Lorien and where he came from. In the screenplay, we deal with it on a kind of a level where there's a lot of mystery. So I think, God willing, movie 2 is going to be the second half of the book in a weird way, because there's a lot more of the history of where he came from and how he got there. I was more interested in him trying to figure out who he was. Who he wants to be and who he ultimately is are 2 different people, and I think that was sort of the dramatic conflict that I liked. This is a kid who really thinks he wants to stay in a small town and fall in love with this girl, but at the same time, his destiny and what he's supposed to do are not going to allow him to do that." And that's like, it's weird that, like, okay, this is me again. This isn't DJ Caruso, but I understand what DJ Caruso is saying. I understand it. Like, I get what he wants to. He wants the viewer to learn of the destiny with number 4. Mm-hmm. But we need more.
Yeah, it's a miscalculation, because there was 2 things that gave me hope at the beginning of this film. One was the appearance of Timothy Olyphant, which I did not know. And the second was, I actually was, at the beginning, mildly impressed by the fact that after number 3 is killed in our opening scene, that, then we have number 4 kind of, chilling in his, like, in hiding in, like, I guess it's Hawaii, I would assume, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. But his leg starts glowing, which is his indication, and like the number 3 symbol is burned into his leg, and we see that that's the third one of those he has. And it's played in the moment, like, oh my God, what's happening? I did think it was interesting that the girl he was with, who apparently, like, these are all his friends, right? And she's out for, like, a nighttime swim with him, and they clearly have feelings for each other. And his leg starts glowing, and he starts, like, freaking out like he's in pain. And she just, like, ditches him. Yeah. And she goes up on the beach, and she's like, he's some kind of freak. And I was just thinking, okay, I get that his leg suddenly has a glow in it, but I don't know if I was with the person that I cared about and that started happening, and they were clearly in pain. I don't know that my first assumption would be they're a freak as much as I would think, oh my God, they have some kind of, like, medical implant or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't that just seem weird to you? Like, why did they instantly be like, oh my God, get away from this guy? It seemed like,
they
help your friend.
They, like, I mean, everybody just abandons him.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, that's just a tangent. But So he runs, then he gets to the beach and he just kind of collapses and passes out. And that's when Timothy Olyphant shows up. And number 4 gets up and says, number 3 is dead. And I remember watching it this morning. But I was actually
I hope so.
There's obviously things I don't remember, like the girl's name. But I remember being kind of impressed that, we're not getting the standard, this kid has no idea who he is, and the whole movie is going to be him discovering his destiny and discovering how he didn't know he was an alien. And, it's like, no, he already knows this stuff. So I was initially tricked into thinking that's kind of cool that the movie is like just starting. But then, as you said, the problem is that means he is privy to a lot of information that we don't have. And I thought that the movie would do what a movie does and give me all that information. And DJ Caruso decided to apparently leave that out until movie 2. And that's so strange when he says that movie 2 is supposed to be like the second part of this book, because wouldn't movie 2 be the second book? Get your shit together, Caruso. Like, what are you doing here?
And actually, Trev, that is the book. I guess number 4 knows everything. He knows about his powers right from the get-go in the first book of the series. And in this one, it's weird too. Like, it's not even just that he may know things but may not know things. He gradually gets powers like through the movie over like a weekend, and they're very ill-defined. They're, first of all, it starts out with flashlight hands. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is the fucking lamest power I've ever seen in my life. The only other lamest power I've seen is, do you remember? I mean, I know you don't like the show, but remember like when Family Guy was good in like the beginning? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, let me tell you.
That never happened, but go ahead.
Well, there's this one episode where, people in the city get superpowers with their, through whatever they get, like through toxic waste or something. And then Meg has the worst power, and it's just that her fingernails grow. And it was like, I was reminded of that. I was like, this is just a stupid power that his hands light up. And then later on, now he can kind of control electricity, maybe? And he's super strong. And he's fast. Like,
there's like telekinesis too, right?
I forgot about that. And telekinesis. But it all happens gradually. And it's so weird because he goes back to the house and he's telling his guardian, Timothy Olyphant, which is honestly, and I'm going to get back to this later, reminds me of the Watchers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have a thing to say about that later. And through the growth of his powers, Henry is like, "Oh, that's awesome! You're finally getting it. You're getting your powers. You're growing." But he's never like telling him what to expect. It's like, why is his handler playing coy? Like, if he knows the history of Lorien and understands what's going on, why isn't he like, all right, let me sit you down and tell you what's going on?
It's really stupid. Like, it's the kind of movie where it's, when you watch it and you take a moment to think about it, you realize how much bullshit the movie is asking you to swallow, right? That this kid has been living on Earth for 11 years and knows that he's an alien, knows that his kind is being hunted by another race. He knows 3 of them have already died. He knows he's next. He knows they have to go on the run. But he's never stopped to ask, hey, what does that other alien race want to do? Like, what are you talking about? How would that have not been a conversation until now? But it's like, it's not a conversation until now because they want the audience to get that conversation. Exactly. But it just doesn't logically make sense for these questions to not have already been answered to him. So this is the thing, like the push and pull of what we know and what we don't know and what the characters know and don't know is inconsistent and does not track in the movie. Also, really quickly too, on another tangent, your point about him developing his powers, we should point out that the first time he gets flashlight hands is in school. He's in class. It's like his second day of school. And his hands just start glowing in class. Everyone sees it. He runs out, like, terrified because he doesn't know what's happening. Everyone is, like, freaking out. I remember watching that scene, too, and being like, wow, I can't believe they're already, like, we're only about 20 minutes into the movie, and we're already ditching the high school thing, and now everyone's going to know he's a freak, and the whole town's going to come for him. No, he goes back to school the next day. Nobody brings it up. Nobody's like, well, he's just like, hey, it was a prank. What?
But even though the first time it happens with his leg glowing, everybody abandons him.
Yeah.
but this time in the new town, nobody gives a shit.
The residents of Paradise, Ohio, they're way more chill, I guess.
Yeah. They're used to people's hands spontaneously glowing in the class, and it's so bright, and it's so it's just like so stupid. Is the word I would say. Like the design of it too, even the design of his powers too. This is around the time where movie posters had the orange and blue color scheme. And I know a lot of our listeners, are pretty big, film fans, I would say. So around this time, the late 2000s, the early 2000s, movie posters had blue and orange. It was like
I
this
like how you're
big
saying
thing.
this time. That's still a thing. Have you seen the Kong versus Godzilla poster?
Oh, you're right.
They're still
it
doing
is the
this.
same.
Yeah.
I guess that maybe it was the start. It was the start of it.
Yeah.
But his powers are blue luminescent, but there's a hint of orange as well. And it's like this weird color scheme that now the marketing has infiltrated the film, and it's just really frustrating. I don't know. I pointed that out, but
Yeah, we're trying to find things to talk about here.
We're trying, because the flashlight hands are just stupid. I'm sorry, but there's nothing cool about flashlight hands.
I mean, I could see it being. I mean, I could see like the practicality of it, but I'm not excited by a hero that has flashlight hands.
Oh, Trev, there was definitely practicality when they're searching around dark rooms. Guess who's always holding out his hands?
Yeah.
This is my hero for the next 6 to 7 films. Is gonna just light up rooms.
Yeah, and his main primary power is like if I'm with him and I have my iPhone with me, I'm equally as powerful. My flashlight app.
So
whatever.
whatever.
Alex Pettifer, he's whatever in this. Diana Agron, who I guess was from Glee, but I am not a fan, so I didn't watch it. As Sarah, as the romantic lead in this, this is another actress I just feel bad for in this because she's just a cipher of a character, right? She's just like the girl that he falls for. And it's interesting because I was thinking though to go back to like falling into high school cliches. Her whole thing is she's kind of not rebellious, but she's in trouble with the school. We see that she's kind of an outcast. We'll find out why later, and we'll just say it now. It's because she was the girlfriend of the jock, the homecoming king quarterback guy, and she dumped him. So he's got the whole school kind of turned against her. And she's like a photographer. That's her whole thing. And she loves taking photos, and she has this blog where she posts all her photos, and she's obsessed with cameras. And I was just thinking, like, oh, she was clearly like designed to be not goth, but probably like more nerdy than the movie wants and will allow her to be. And this felt like such a studio thing too, right? Like she's written to be, oh, that's that girl from every 80s movie, like the cool, independent, indie hipster girl. But somebody in the studio level is like, yeah, but she's still got to be like a hot cheerleader.
Yeah.
And it's just like the disconnect there is strange too. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say about her. I just, she's likable, I suppose. She's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same
Callan
goes for
McAuliffe as Sam. Yeah, same. Standard nerd, I guess.
So there's actually something kind of interesting going on with Sam and his father who has disappeared. Well, they're alien conspiracy theorists, and presumably his dad was abducted, and obviously you're sitting here being like, okay, well, this is a movie about aliens that have come to Earth and are hiding. Well, maybe the dad is important. Well, the dad turns out is important, that he has been contacted by the Lorians to help. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying here. Like, like help them? Because basically the whole point of this is that all the numbers, there's 9 of them, have to come together to like form like, I don't know, like a super weapon. Like who knows? Who the fuck knows? We'll get to it in movie 5. But there's something interesting there, at least, that this alien conspiracy theorist and his disappeared father is now a friend with an alien from another planet and helping him along the journey. There's something there, but the movie never ever does anything with it. There's a scene
because
where,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, because as you pointed out, the problem is that you'd think that's cool, right? This kid who's like obsessed with aliens, and his dad went missing because of his obsession with aliens. And now he's friends with an alien. But number 4 is not alien-like at all, because he's lived most of his life on Earth. So that's the thing, is like you remove that like interesting element to it, because it's basically he's just friends with a handsome new guy at school.
Yeah, exactly. And you think he's gonna help him out, like, for real? Like there's a point in the film where, spoilers, Timothy Oliphant's character Henry, the guardian of number 4, disappears. So he's presumably captured. And John goes, hey, Sam, I need your help. I really need your help. And then it cuts to them driving. And then they get to where they need to go. And John looks at Sam and goes, thanks. You can go home now. And I'm like, wait a second. you just asked your friend for help, you just asked your friend for a ride. Like this is just like the stupidest shit in the world. And I need to say this here because we get to this house and of course Sam stays and helps him. They find Henry hooked, captured. This is 70 minutes into the movie, and we finally get our first conflict with the bad aliens, the Mogadorians or Mogadarians or whatever. This is the first time that our heroes are meeting the bad aliens. 70 minutes into the movie. Mm-hmm. And that is unacceptable. We have 30 minutes left in here, and this is the first time they've met. We talked about this in our Fantastic Four episode, where Doctor Doom, the main villain of our Fantastic Four, shows up for the final 20 minutes.
Well,
and it just doesn't work.
Besides the Mogadorians, there's another major character that we're going to have to talk about in this regard too, in terms of too little, too late, right? So, but we'll save that. Speaking of the thing with Sam's dad, and speaking of stupid stuff, I also just want to point out, like, in terms of story elements here, so I guess we're just bouncing back and forth, but
sure,
it's really bothersome when you're watching a movie and your heroes too are just consistently making dumb decisions. Yeah. And if the movie, I mean, you can get away with that if the movie has a sense of humor about it, or like points it out, and makes it like an element that it seems to be driving the stuff forward. But okay, two things here. These two people, Henry and number 4, are on the run from the Mogadorians. They know that now they're the next targets. Henry's like, we got to go somewhere where the Mogadorians won't track us down. So where does he take him? To the town where the human who is trying to help them all used to live and has gone missing. Why would you take him there? Why would you take him to a town that is connected to this entire like big story that's going on? Go anywhere else, Yeah. So that's first the problem. And then you also have the element of one of the first things Henry tells number 4 when he gets to town is you got to be invisible. Just be invisible. Can't let yourself, get pictures taken of yourself or anything like that. And Henry goes, yeah. Or number 4 is like, I know. Who does he instantly start hanging out with? A girl who's obsessed with photography and has a blog where she puts up photos of people.
It's so stupid.
God, so stupid.
But Trev, you missed the part where they have this conversation about, blending in, and he looks at Henry. Number 4 looks at Henry. He's like, don't worry, I know how to blend in. And then it cuts to John Smith at school, and what does he do? He puts a hoodie on. Mm-hmm. He puts his hood up. Classic. Oh, but also invisible.
When she like takes pictures of him, he's not bothered by it at all. He like poses. No. Like
Even when he's on the blog looking at pictures of himself, he's smiling about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is you deserve to be killed. I want to watch I Am Number 5 because just get rid of you. You're stupid.
Yeah, and that's why the only kind of like moment at this point, the only moments for the film has the slightest hint of a heartbeat is whenever Oliphant walks in the room to yell at him for being stupid. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's a good segue to the man of the hour, Timothy Oliphant, the man I thought would save this for me, and God, he tried, but he's just up against a wall here. Timothy Oliphant. So I'm just going to preface this. Those who know me know that I'm a heterosexual man, but Timothy Oliphant is definitely my man crush. I love this guy. In fact, I remember watching this movie, and there's a part where he's like, why do you want to go to school? And he's like, what's my option? Just stay home with you all day and just talk to you? And I'm like, dude, I would take that deal. Just hang out to the Oliphant 24/7. Come on, man. Oliphant is great. He's just so naturally charismatic. Seems like such a cool dude in real life. He's just always like dynamic on screen. I've loved him ever since, Well, I guess technically the first thing I probably ever saw him in was Go or Scream 2, whichever one of those came first. Can't really remember the timeline in my head right now. But liked him from there, but obviously Deadwood, and then going into Justified. Just love the dude. Very excited to see him in this. And yeah, I think he's the most entertaining part, not because his character is well written, not because he's more interesting than anyone else, because nobody is in this, but it's just, there's something about Oliphant that it's just a natural charisma, which the other performers in this don't have.
No, I like him too. I'm a big fan of him. I'm not really good with his older filmography. Like, I never watched Justified, nothing of that. Timothy Oliphant to me is like one of the best guests on Conan.
Yeah, well, and Conan have this like amazing friendship. That's
yes, yeah. And like me and you both are huge Conan O'Brien fans. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of my first introduction to him as the Timothy Oliphant the person, and he just seems like the coolest motherfucker out there. And I just like he just oozes charisma and charm, and he's just a good dude. Him appearing on The Mandalorian season 2 is awesome. I like when he pops up in anything. I'm like, yeah. He really should be a bigger. He should be a movie star, and he's not, which is frustrating. But he is all of the movie star things that we look for, and
he came in the wrong era. Imagine Timothy Olyphant existing in like the 70s. How big of a star that dude would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been spoiler alert. He does not make it through this movie, and any interest you might have, I really felt mine just like plummet after that. Like once he's out of the picture, it's like, okay, well, I was really hoping like when he got wounded, I was really like, oh, okay, they're not gonna get rid of him though, right? And then when they do, I was just like, no, okay, I guess not only do I not want to see the sequels, I'm kind of done with this movie at this point.
Sure.
But I guess we still have one other character, but let's just briefly talk about the Mogadarians, because the main one is played by an actor who I like, and I think you do too.
Yep.
Kevin Durand, from Lost, as I pointed out. Also, people know him as the Blob in the best X-Men movie. No, I'm just kidding. in Wolverine Origins. But no, I like Kevin Durand a lot. But I didn't even. It's interesting because when I saw him the first time in this, I was like, that guy looks familiar.
Yeah.
And I had a thought that maybe it's Kevin Durand, but I didn't really think it was. And then when I looked up, I'm like, okay, yeah, I was right, because it's a pretty decent makeup job on him. Not a good makeup design, but I just mean it does well at like hiding him. I do kind of hate the design of the Mogadarians because it is like so generic, and also this goes back to your thing about logic. I'm interested to hear how they're described in the books, because there's a part in this where Kevin Durant has to go into a grocery store to buy a bunch of turkeys to feed to the big like beast mutant thing that they drive around with as like their like hunter tracker. And he poses a human when he goes into the grocery store, and first of all he puts up his hoodie because it's clearly their running theme,
of course.
Puts on sunglasses, and then we learn that he's also put like two little like fleshy patches over the gills that they have on the sides of the nose. And there's a scene where he gets in the car and he pulls those off, and suddenly it's like he can breathe again, and I'm just thinking like, yeah, but you have nostrils right there in your nose. Like, why did they design this to where there's a human nose with nostrils and then gills next to it? And I got to imagine that maybe like in the description of the book, like they don't have like a human nose, but they just like were like, no, who cares? Like that, people will figure it out,
Yeah, and they need them to look a little bit more humanoid for the movies, right?
Yeah. So Kevin Durant's performance in this, I mean, whatever, but you can tell too, there's a couple brief moments with him where he gets to like monologue a little bit, and he's trying to make this into like a fun villainous character. But we just don't know this character at all. Like, there's just, when you make this kind of movie, you need a memorable, really cool villain. And I think this guy, we know that this actor could have been that, but as you said, he comes so late in the picture, and then he's given so little to do, and he doesn't have barely any interaction with our hero until the very end. That's a problem.
It's also a problem when you have alien/mutant villains like this, and they all. Like, I understand they're all a race of aliens, but when they look indistinguishable from each other, that's a big problem. So many movies fuck this up, and it's very strange. Like, you gotta make him, like, scarred or something. Like, give him a big fucking scar on the forehead. At least then we know. Or take his ear off. Like, it's... like
give him, like, a signature weapon that he's always holding. Something,
Yeah, like, it was odd, because I always forgot, like, who he was. So... That's a problem in movies. I hate that when it comes to alien races. Why does everybody look exactly the same? So, I don't know. It's kind of like it actually, the design. I didn't hate the design as much as you did. But I understand what you mean by just being generic. Because I wrote down, it reminded me of Star Trek. The
Nero, yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me of Nero, crossed with 30 Days of Night, the vampires there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because I was gonna say it reminded me of Nero, like crossed with like the main villain Luke Goss in Blade 2. Like that's just that same kind of like.
Yep.
With like with the vampire teeth and everything, and then the Nero tattoos. Yeah, definitely. Again, it's like all like
manufactured. Manufactured.
Yeah, it's all calculated, right? Like this, like we know this like look cool in another movie, so we're gonna do it in ours. And then that brings us to our final major character. And if you're wondering why we haven't talked about this character at all yet, it's because she's barely a blip in the film, and that is Theresa Palmer, who I said was this is the one other person I remember being in it before I watched it. She plays number 6. And we only get a couple brief glimpses of her before she shows up for like the third act action finale. And when I said that earlier, I mentioned that I didn't take any notes for like 50 minutes. The first thing that brought me back was I wrote a note when she gets her big Terminator entrance at the school for the big finale. And I just wrote, "This is stupid."
It's funny when you wrote that because at the finale when she arrives, I wrote
you're talking about the other. She has the earlier like slow-mo explosion walk.
Yeah. So I wrote here, hot blonde wearing sunglasses walking away from a slow-mo explosion. Did this just become my favorite movie? Obviously tongue in cheek, but
that was the part in the screenplay where Michael Bay was like, "I think I might direct this movie."
He's like, "I know this one guy in Canada that would just eat this up."
And then they're like, "But Michael, she needs to be wearing pants and not a bikini." He's like, "Never mind, DJ, you can have it."
Yeah, and it's weird though. Okay, so I know she shows up later, but she's the character you want to watch, right?
Well, here's the thing. Yes, but let's be honest with ourselves. We are being manipulated into feeling that way. Like we're totally being tricked because there is nothing interesting about her character. She's just the hot, badass warrior that we feel like is maybe the most interesting because we're equating that to like the Sarah Connors and the Ripleys and the Alices that we've always loved in films. And so when she shows up and nothing has been happening in this movie, and then in the last 20 minutes, suddenly it's all action and she's the driving force in it because she shows up, she's got cooler powers than number 4. Yeah. She's like teleporting and going invisible. Yeah. And she's just like, and she has that like badass like appearance to her. You think she's the character you want to watch.
She's got the cool Australian accent.
Yeah, but do you really? Is there anything there? No. So again, it's not even. This isn't a judgment against Theresa Palmer because like, what is there to judge? She's given so little to do here. My thing with Theresa Palmer, I don't know if you agree, Chris. I've always, and this is gonna, I don't mean this as an insult. I mean this more as like my take on it. I've always thought of Theresa Palmer as like a secondary Kristen Stewart. And again, I think this is like feeds off the Twilight thing to where I think she kind of looks like Kristen Stewart. And I feel like early on, I feel like she was placed in movies like this, where it's like, well, the teen market, we're going to get someone who kind of looks like her. And obviously she never kind of took off the same way Stewart did. No. But yeah, do you see that? Do you see like a little bit of a similarity there?
I actually do. I'm looking at a picture right now, and yeah, you're so right. You're so right. I didn't even think about that, but it's definitely, again, calculated. Big time. Big time. Yeah. You keep, I know you keep kind of shitting on the last 20 minutes, but I mean, at least there's some life to it. Like the last 20 minutes is like, it's sort of fun. What I wrote down here was like, at least we get to see these powers in action, and there's at least something visually interesting happening, because we have not mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it right now. This movie is very flat. It's not really shot well. So I was thinking, who's the cinematographer on this? So I look it up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a man, his name is Guillermo Navarro. Now, fellow listeners, this is a brilliant cinematographer. He shoots basically all of Guillermo del Toro's films. He shot the brilliant, in my top 10 of all time, Pan's Labyrinth. This guy is a master cinematographer. He shot films for Robert Rodriguez. He shot one for Tarantino. He's great. And guess what, Trev? I don't know if you know this, but he shot a favorite of our show. He shot Spawn. Which shocked me. But yeah, like Guillermo Navarro is like a brilliant cinematographer. So watching this film, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, did he like do this from home? You know what I mean? Like, it's very strange. So at least at the end, the last 20 minutes is at least some visual flair. There's something going on. Do I give a shit? No.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I hear you, Chris. I hear what you're saying, but I couldn't have cared less even at that point. And this goes back. This is the Fantastic Four problem, right? When you have a movie that's like this awkwardly staged to where just all the action happens at the very end, with characters you're not involved in. And this thing is like, I don't care about seeing this villain get defeated because I don't know who this villain is. Like, I do want an emotional investment. I don't care how cool your action scenes are, and I don't even think they're that cool. They're just like, I think you think they're cool because it's the first action you've been given. Sure. In an hour and 45 minutes. But I'd be more into it if I was like really interested in seeing, number 4 face off against this guy, but I'm not because they haven't interacted at all. And number 6, who is again the new element, she's come in right now, so I have no attachment to her either. So I'm not really worried about her. In fact, it's hard. You can't feel worried about her because clearly right away you're like, oh, she's the more badass one. She's gonna be the one who's constantly pulling them out of the fire.
Actually, this is the greatest tangent that we can make to get to a very broken thing in this film. I'm watching this movie, and I'm scared for number 4 to be killed. But then they've introduced number 6. They've skipped a number. Okay. Now, listeners, there is a rule in the movie, which I think I've said in the synopsis here, but let me remind you, these numbers, there's 9 of them, and they need or can only be killed in sequential order. That is the rule of the film. So, number 4 is now fighting alongside number 6, and I'm thinking, well, they can't kill number 6. They got to kill 4 first, and then they got to go find fucking number 5, wherever the fuck he is. Who knows where 5 is? So 6 should be invincible, right? Well, let's get back to the Collider interview with DJ Caruso, because this was a sticking point for actually the interviewer. He goes, this is the interviewer. Their powers are all linked? DJ Caruso. They're all linked. They're all different, but using them together, they can be powerful. The interviewer. What happens if they're killed out of order? Is that even possible? DJ Caruso. They can't be killed out of order. They can be killed out of order if 4 and 6 actually ultimately work together, or if they're in the same place, then they can be killed. But they can't be killed out of order. Book 2 deals with finding number 5. And in this screenplay, we don't even deal with number 5. Interviewer. I'm confused. And so was I. That is not talked about at all in the movie, or did I miss that?
No, I was confused. And Chris, I'm gonna take this a little further if you don't mind. I want to read the rest of that part of the interview just because I think it's hilarious too.
Excellent.
Because this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how the movie is throwing so much at you, but not giving you enough to still understand it. And this is DJ Caruso, the director of the piece, trying to explain an element of this movie. And I want you people to listen to this and understand that Chris and I just watched the movie. We were trying to suss this out from the movie. This is the director. So, feeding right off of where Chris left off, the interviewer says, I'm confused. How does it mean you can't be killed? DJ Caruso. Well, basically, ultimately, the curse, these 9 children are all members of the Lorian Guard. And the Lorian Guard were sent down here in sort of the way that the powers are separated. The Mogadarians know, Kevin Durand knows, as the Mogadarian commander, that he has to kill these children in order to remove all their powers, or for the future of these powers to even exist. It's sort of like, I don't want to say the last Airbender, but once they're all gone, they're all gone. And ultimately, we learn that number 3 at the beginning of the movie has been killed. Number 4 is next. When he kills number 3, he whispers, and they're sort of connected in this ethereal kind of way. He whispers into number 3's ear, and we don't know what he's saying until it hits number 4, John, when he's in Florida. And then that incident happens, and he sees that vision, and he knows that he's next. Okay, this is me, Trevor, back. If you were listening to that and going, what the hell is he talking about? Yeah, exactly. I don't understand that anymore. He's trying to clear it up, and it still makes no sense. It's just nonsense, and that's the way it moves. And I had that same thought, and watching the film, I knew this would bother you, because I know about your thing with logic and rules in films. And when they said that they had to be killed in order, my next thought was, so you're telling me that if these Mogadarians are somewhere, and they walk by, and let's say they go check in at a hotel, and they find out that number 5 is staying in this hotel, and they see him sleeping in bed, completely vulnerable, but they haven't killed number 4 yet, they can't kill number 5? Why? And the problem is, the movie never explains it.
Never.
And that's the issue. If you're that's a stupid idea in general, but I bet a clever writer could come up with good reasons for that. In fact, I came up with one earlier thinking about this. My thought was that, if you kill them out of order, my thought is if you kill number 1 first, okay, then whatever powers he had completely go away. But if you kill number 2 first, then that somehow still transfers the powers to the next people. Okay, that's kind of dumb, but whatever. I came up with that in 30 seconds. The movie doesn't offer us any explanation for why they have to die in order. And you're right. So then in that final action scene, all the tension should be on number 4. And in fact, they play that a little bit. You see number 6 trying very hard to protect him, But I think at that point you've kind of forgotten those rules because the movie barely talks about them. You don't know what they mean. And ultimately, I'll say too, and actually this comes up again in the interview, the interviewer had to ask him again, what's the deal with the Mogadarians? What are they trying to do? Because I still not really clear on what they're all about in this film at the end of it. Because they say they're basically like, they're that cliche again, of they're like a race that's trying to take over every planet they go to. And the idea is that they need to, I guess they're trying to take out the 9 so that they're just completely free to then take over Earth, right? But like, these 9 kids are like spread all over the world and basically in hiding. And they're not, these 9 kids are not trying to come together to be a force. No. You get the feeling that if the Mogadarians never engage with them, that these kids wouldn't even bother them because their guardians are telling them not to. So why don't the Mogadarians just like start taking over Earth? Right? Yeah. Like, why bother with all this stuff hunting down the numbers first? It's just, and these questions are not answered.
And if we know about other planets and other aliens, why would the Lorians send all 9 to Earth? And that's, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they aren't. That's what I'm led to believe, though, in the movie, that they're all on Earth. Maybe in book fucking 3, they're like, oh, wait. And number 7 is on fucking Pluto. You know, like, who knows? Like, I just don't. In the manufacturing of this type of movie, and in setting up these stupid rules and MacGuffins, and you just lose logic, and it's just frustrating as a viewer. Like, again, I don't even want to say frustrating because honestly, I'm not really thinking about it too hard. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting there and I was like, I have like an abacus and I'm like, fucking okay, here we go, and getting a projector out and trying to do math and trying to figure. Like, I don't care as much because it's the simplicity of the stupidity is right there. Like you said, in 30 seconds, if you kill number fucking 3 before killing 1 and 2, then 3's powers goes into all the other numbers. And all the other numbers, you know, cut to a montage of all the other numbers getting like they're starting to glow, right? They get flashlight bodies, you know, instead of flashlight hands. And then they just kind of like convulse, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, my powers have like I just one-upped. You know, like they just leveled up. It's so simple. It's a stupid thing, and it's done stupid, and it's stupid. Like it just is.
And as like one last piece of evidence of how like unmemorable the movie is, but also like how calculated and cynical it is in terms of like just bringing in everything it can from better properties and stuff. Yeah, there's one other giant element of this that we haven't even talked about that just occurred to me, and that is. Okay, so I imagine whether this is James Frey and his fellow writers sitting down at the initial stage of this or whatever, right? People sitting down to be like, okay, we're going to design the ultimate like YA sci-fi teen property. So what are all the different things we can bring in? And okay, we'll put him in high school and they'll be like the girl that he flirts with, but there's a slight element of love triangle because there's the jock that she used to be with, who of course by the end of the movie is somewhat redeemed so he can be a character later, right? What's missing? What do most classic sci-fi heroes have? Well, if we go back to John Carter, the first ever the sci-fi hero that starts it all, he had a fun animal sidekick called Woola. And then so many of their sci-fi heroes have fun little sidekicks, whether it's like a droid or an animal. Well, number 4's got to have one of those too, right? So yes, he gets a little dog named Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar, named after the famous football player from the Cleveland Browns. There's a poster of this guy of Bernie Kosar, the real Bernie Kosar, on the wall in the house they move into. So he names the dog Bernie Kosar because it's a dog that just arrives at the house one day. And later in the film, we find out that this dog is actually a shape-shifting chimera who was given to him, unbeknownst to him, to follow him his whole life and protect him from his parents. And it turns into like a big CGI beast at the end to fight the other CGI beasts. And what I will say is pretty bad CGI. Yeah. And like if there's one slight moment that maybe has like the slightest like this little hint of emotional pull, it's the moment where Bernie Kosar gets wounded and turns back into the dog, and it's just like, oh, you don't tend to see dogs look that wounded, and like it like lays down and its like leg is broke, and it's like, oh no, like at that point I was like, oh, I don't want to see a dog in pain. But yeah, it's that was the moment I wrote down too, is that the dog falls. It's a real dog, by the way. It's not CGI. It's a real dog, and it goes to this spot and it just kind of lays down. And you're like, oh my god, is it gonna die? Is this dog are we just gonna watch this real dog die now? And the worst part about it is that none of our characters care. like
the movie keeps going, and all the heroes win the day, and they're all like going back home, and they're all talking about the adventure and what they just went through, and then Bernie Kosar limps around the corner like he left the school and traveled miles to get back to his owners or his friends that didn't give a fuck about him. It's so bizarre.
I can't believe we haven't talked about it more though, because now I am realizing that it actually is very fun to talk about a dog named Bernie Kosar. Like that's funny. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty good. And it's so weird because like the whole start of this little creature, I mean, we might as well say it, is that like in the very beginning of the movie there's like a CGI gecko. And you're like, why is there a CGI gecko in this movie? I was like, I was honestly like, why didn't they just put a gecko on the thing if they want to show that they're in Florida or something? Like, just get that. Okay, the CGI gecko jumps into the truck. When they relocate to Ohio, it gets out of the truck, and you see, like, it go into the bushes, and then something furry comes out of the bushes. And then later on, you see that there's a dog there. And you're like, okay, so this gecko has transformed into this dog now. And then this dog is always like warning, like Bernie Kosar is always like warning number 4 of stuff. It just kind of barks randomly sometimes, and nobody thinks anything of it. like they're always just. It's very strange how much they don't address it. But Bernie Kosar is always there barking to warn our hero. And then, like I said, they forget about Bernie Kosar when he's an inch from death. It's a very strange movie.
It is. Yep.
Very strange movie.
Yep.
I was gonna mention. I don't have much more to say about the movie. I don't know if you do.
No, I don't either. No.
But I was gonna say. So, like, I mean, I kind of want to move on to like saying stuff about, what would have happened and stuff if this was good, or what could happen next, and that sort
I will
of thing.
just say too, just to briefly hit on it, and this ties into what we've been saying too about how like. So ultimately, my final wrap up on this before we jump into that would be that we've kind of basically said this, but. This is a movie that just has no soul, right? It's a soulless film. As you said, it's all set up. It feels incomplete as you watch it. When it ends, it does that thing we always make fun of, and it was us talking about this that led us to create this podcast. When a movie ends with the characters going, well, now we're off to the real adventure, right? And then knowing that we'll never see that. And this movie like definitely does that at the end. It should basically say to be continued.
This is the first town I've left without Henry. But it's also the first one I have a reason to come back to. Henry was right. We're stronger together. So we will find the others. My planet is called Lorien, but Earth is my home now. It's as good a place as any in the universe. And that's how it's going to stay. Never fall away.
So it just feels incomplete. As you're like everything's missing, but like that notion of it being so calculated also ties into the writers, right? And I'm not just talking about like the Pittacus Lore, the pseudonym of James Frey and the other writer, but you think of this development process, and whether it was Spielberg or Michael Bay, one of them knew that there was money to be made now in the YA market. So I'm assuming they like went looking for manuscripts of upcoming YA material. And they found this one. They looked at the plot elements. Everything there seemed like it could be engineered into a successful kind of sci-fi movie. And they said, okay, well, who should we get to write it? Well, we'll get, as you said, sorry, I gotta bring their names back up again. Alfred Gough and Miles Millar, right? Why do you get them? Because they were the creators of Smallville.
Yep. And
this is a movie about a superpowered kid in a small town. So get in the Smallville writers. And then they thought, well, you know what, though? Okay, that's good. But we need a little bit of a humor punch up here. Get someone from Buffy. So who do they get? Marty Noxon, Joss Whedon's number 2 on Buffy. And you can feel the Marty Noxon moments in this movie. Because most of this movie has like no humor, and then in that last third, suddenly you got like there's the scene where number 6 uses his powers to charge up. She's like, Red Bulls for pussies. And then you have Sam picking up a gun, like an alien gun, and like blowing away an alien, and Sarah looks at him kind of surprised, and he's like, I play a lot of Xbox. And those moments are always like, there's Marty Noxon coming in, Yeah.
Trev, this is why I have such a good time doing this podcast with you. We are on the exact same page. Like, that's exactly where I was going on the tangent afterwards.
Yeah.
Is that, oh yeah, like this, I have all these notes here. So remember I mentioned the thing about the Watchers earlier? Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, I know they're Guardians, but really they're Watchers. Well, this is kind of not my thesis on the film or anything. But I was So I watched this a few days ago. So just so get it out of the way, there's been news about Joss Whedon that's come out, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Joss Whedon that we knew from Buffy back in the day. This has so many nuggets of something good, and I really want to hammer that home. It's soulless, but there is something here, and there's something here that feels like it could play easily in the Whedonverse, and the Marty Noxon stuff is so. If you're a fan of Buffy, like we are, it is palpable when her lines pop up, her little touches, for sure, as Trev said. But there's something here that would it have been a good TV show? You know, it's that would it have been a good miniseries instead of this series of films, would this have worked better on the CW? Or where was Buffy originally? Originally, Buffy was on what network?
UPN.
UPN.
No, WB. Sorry, it was on WB originally.
Right, it went to UPN after it was canceled.
Yeah, WB. It went from the WB to UPN, and then eventually those two just combined into the CW. Ironically. But,
right. Yeah. But I had mentioned earlier that this feels like an early 2000s, something from the early 2000s, and that's when the Whedonverse was in full effect. This feels like something that should have aired on the WB, UPN, CW. It just feels that way, and I don't know. It's a fantasy coming of age story, and there's so many MacGuffins and glimpses and lore things here. It feels like it could have played in that universe, not in the exact universe, but you know what I mean. Like I could see Whedonites popping up in something like the TV show called I Am Number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn on if I fully agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with part of what you're saying.
Okay.
But I would put a slight twist on it, because you said there's nuggets of something good here. And that's where I don't know if I agree, because I do think this is ultimately so trite and so cliched. What I think you're getting at, though, and the way I would twist it slightly, is there are nuggets of, and I think, okay, let me try to frame this another way. If this had been a show on the CW or UPN, I think you're right that it would have been more successful. Not because it would have been any better, but because, as we've seen with many other CW shows that just end up running for like years and years, right? People would have just kind of started to look at this as like, it almost becomes habitual, right? Like, well, I'm in at this point. I'll just stick with it. And that's the thing. Like, I could see this being drawn out over time. I'm not convinced it would be good. But I think if a show like Vampire Diaries, and now we're gonna have the Vampire Diary fans come after us, but if a show like that can run for like multiple seasons on a network like CW, and to be fair, by the way, I watch way more CW shows than any person my age should. So I'm not dissing CW. I love the Arrowverse. I like Riverdale. But yeah, I think you're right that this could have ran multiple seasons maybe with that kind of audience tuned in, just accepting it as another one of those shows. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that there's anything good here. It's everything that. When you say there's nuggets of stuff being good here, it's again, and I don't mean this in a mean way, I think you're being tricked into saying that just because you're recognizing all the shit it's ripping off from better
Totally. You're so
movies
right.
that already existed. Yeah.
I'm sitting over here nodding my head along, like big time. You're so right. I'm being tricked. It's the nuggets of something that I like that has been already done before. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So obviously this didn't get any sequels.
No.
For what we've been saying, it's just, I think it just didn't do anything to make any cultural impact whatsoever. It just kind of came and went. And I think the preteen to teen audience was fully aware of that. Because again, it did fine. It did like box office wise, it did make its money back. It did make a bit of a profit. But I think it's just people aren't as, people are stupid. Oh, now we're gonna get people after us. But people are stupid, generally speaking. But I think sometimes when they're fed something really stupid, they kind of take another glance and is like, oh, wait a second. I like you're saying, I'm being tricked here. And that's why this never had any impact in anybody's memory. When we were even talking about like doing this movie this week, we were like, I can't believe it's been 10 years. This movie came out a decade ago, and I've never heard anybody talk about it. Not once. I mean,
it does make you wonder though, right? Because we said that, like I said, it wasn't an entire failure though, right? So it made like a little bit of money. So it does make you wonder, is there a part of the reason why they didn't do any more? Do you think any of it has to do with the Alex Pettifer element too? Should we briefly talk about that?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
I know we said we don't want to like harp on this because it's not interesting enough to devote like a half an hour to or anything. But
we'll do it quickly for sure.
We should probably briefly mention the whole Alex Pettifer thing because maybe some people are listening to this and going, "Who's this Alex Pettifer guy they're talking about?" Like this guy was like the star of Magic Mike and this big franchise attempt. I don't know who this guy is. Well, there's a reason for that. Do you want to talk about this briefly?
Sure. Yeah, he just it seems like he was pretty difficult coming up in his stardom. In Magic Mike, he was kind of a recluse. He kind of he did his own thing. He was kind of arrogant and stubborn. And like you said, he was 21 when he made this movie. Then I guess he would have been, 19? Making Magic Mike? Maybe 19 or 20? So, I mean, this good-looking guy gets a starring role in a Channing Tatum film. Kind of thinks he's hot shit. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but he did at the time. And even on this film, like he didn't... Oh, I mean, I guess on Magic Mike, he didn't get along with Channing Tatum at all. They did reshoots where he came back for the reshoots, and it was just kind of a toxic environment with him.
The more full story to that, right? Is that so? Like while they're making Magic Mike, he rented an apartment from a friend of Channing Tatum's, and he ended up like leaving the apartment early for some reason and did not pay like the rent that he was supposed to, and then so Channing Tatum like sent him an email, kind of bitching him out, saying like, well, hey, don't be an ass about this, just pay the money.
Yeah.
And Alex Pettifer took it upon himself that he felt he was being hounded for the money, so even though he knew he owed it, he just decided not to pay it. And then after that, he had to go back for these reshoots. So he had to walk into set with Channing Tatum, now furious at him. And Alex Pettifer has said too, like while I was making Magic Mike, he was already starting to get a reputation for being difficult. His agent and handlers just told him, just keep to yourself. So his like way he handled that was when they would yell cut, he would just go put in headphones, go sit off by himself. Yeah. And that, so everyone on the set was just like, well, this guy thinks he's better than everyone else. So he was just like, well, I'm just trying to keep my head down. And then, as you're about to say, like on this film, him and Caruso, I guess, kind of got into it quite a bit too.
Yeah, they just didn't get along. Didn't get along so much so that they had to step in and actually give him a handler. Mm-hmm. So it's a shame when this happens with young actors. Well, we haven't even mentioned this, but he actually had an opportunity for another starring YA type of a film called Beastly, which is the reimagining of Beauty and the Beast, which was released just a couple weeks after I Am Number 4. Mm-hmm. So he had a 1-2 punch of possible success. So this guy was at I don't want to say the top of his game, but you know what I mean? Like he was striking gold right away that like, okay, Magic Mike starring role in a potential franchise of 7 films, and then this reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. And he was going to be, he was kind of a poster child for the teen audience.
Teenagers.
Chris, I'm about to either blow your mind or severely bum you out. But I think I know the answer on that one. Because I don't know if you know this, but he actually had an even earlier attempt or possibility of stardom. Because back in 2006, a much younger Alex Pettifer was the star of a movie called Stormbreaker, which is the movie adaptation of the first novel in the Alex Rider series that failed and had no further sequels, and we will be doing on this show one day.
Oh my god!
So we will be revisiting Alex Pettifer in the YA adaptation realm.
Oh my god! Yeah. All right, if we must. Yep. If we must, I will do it.
I mean, I will say that I don't know if happy ending is the right word, but Alex Pettifer has recently done interviews where he seems to have gotten his shit together. At least personally, right? Because he's very self-reflective on that, and he's talked about how he basically takes the blame on the whole Magic Mike thing, and he said like, that was kind of me. That was on me. I was uncooperative. I was basically full of myself, So it seems like he gets it at least, and so. I mean, I don't know. Like, hopefully he gets another shot. I don't know. I did like him in Magic Mike. I thought he was fine in that. That's all I have to go off of. I never saw Stormbreaker. I will. Never saw Beastly. Thank God. I don't think they were meant sequels to that. So,
no, I don't think so either.
But yeah, I agree with you that it is a shame when that happens because you understand it, right? These young, handsome guys who obviously have tons of people telling them, "Hey, your shit doesn't stink. Just because you're young and handsome, we're gonna make you into a big star." It's not surprising when that pressure gets to some of them and they break a little bit.
Well, Trev, when when you're doing tours of Hot Topics around the United States of America, I mean,
Yeah.
you know where you stand in the cultural atmosphere. I think that's it. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I have nothing more to say about
Okay.
this movie.
Okay.
I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised we were able to talk this much about it. My
here.
fear going into this episode was that I was like, what is there to say about that film? Ultimately, the discussion is about how it's just a big nothing burger, and that's a shame. I wish it was worse. I wish it was entertaining in its horribleness, but it's not. It's just completely middle of the road, and that's to me the ultimate sin of a film.
Yep, I agree. What are we doing?
Well, we should talk about. Well, Chris, I hate to say it, but we're not leaving the YA realm anytime soon.
Oh, right.
Because we are heading into. Oh, come on, Chris, cheer up a little bit.
I know. I'm kidding. I love it.
We are leaving February and heading into Mortal March.
Yes.
And in March, we will be viewing Mortal Instruments and Mortal Engines.
Yes. One of those I have seen. I will not tell you which one.
Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure I can assume which one, but
True. But yeah, so some more YA stuff for you. We thought it was time. It was time for us to break the seal, so to speak.
yeah, I mean, we got a lot to get to. We might as well start trying to plow through some of it.
Yeah, for sure. So if you've enjoyed February, look forward to Mortal March, and keep up with us on social media. We are at F2F Pod, at F2 the number 2 F Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and all of it, Facebook, all that. Rate, review, whatever you do. That would be sweet. If you like this, please shoot us a star rating. That'd be cool. And how about you join the tribe and hit that subscribe and continue with us along our journey. There's some great stuff. I was looking at some of the list, and I'm actually looking forward to a couple things sooner than later. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah. February was rough for us.
Yeah, it was rough.
Fantastic Four and I'm number 4. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe things will start turning around in Mortal March. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Stay tuned. Again, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yep. See ya.